Okay. All right, so let me share my screen. All right, so welcome everyone to our panel in our series called ABA Beyond ASD. And today's panel focuses on interdisciplinary career paths. So I have a little agenda here. So first I'll briefly speak about the purpose of the series. We also have a pre-test, this is and post-test to kind of measure knowledge prior to the panel and following the panel. After that, we'll have our panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll get into the questions that we have for them. Towards the end, we'll leave room for questions and answers from anyone who is attending. And the last thing on here is a graduate application fee raffle. So if you are a student who is interested in pursuing graduate school, we have a raffle that you can enter that if selected, you will have one of your graduate application fees waived to increase accessibility rate to, I guess, going into the field. So kind of a brief overview. So I'm Dr. Natalia Baires. I am a clinical assistant professor and program director at Southern Illinois University. And we also have my colleagues here, Dr. Lesley Shawler and Dr. Natalie Williams Awodeha. And we all are faculty at SIU. And so we kind of came together to create this ABA Beyond ASD series to expose undergraduate and graduate students to the different applications of behavior analysis beyond autism spectrum disorder and developmental disabilities, and to introduce, these students or whoever wants to attend to just different subspecialties within the field. So that's, the purpose of it. And we were able to kind of create this series through funding from SEAB, the Society of Experimental Analysis of Behavior. All right, so this is our pre-test. So you can open up your phone, you can scan the QR code. I believe a link will be put in the chat. So there it is right now. So I just ask, you all to please open up the pre-test, take it so we can get a measure, right, of knowledge pre and post the panel. So I'll move on just for the sake of time. And if you're interested in entering into our raffle, our graduate application fee raffle, here's a QR code, and I believe the link will also be put in the chat for those of you who are interested in entering. All right, so now that I got all the house kind of keeping things out of the way, it's finally, to the exciting part, why we're here today. So we're very excited and fortunate to have these great panelists with us here today. So we have Dr. Zoë Lucock, we have Nicholas Maio-Aether, and I know you just said how to pronounce your name, so I'm sorry if I mispronounce it, and Dr. Bruce Tinor. So our first question is for panelists to introduce themselves. I'll just kind of call on panelists. Dr. Lucock, if you want to please start us off and share a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's really, really exciting to be here. And I jump at any opportunity to talk about behavioral gerontology and try and convert some people over to working with older adults. So about me, I am a behavior analyst. I am a BCBA-D, and I'm also a UKBA Cert, which is a new qualification, which is a UK specific only behavior analytic qualification. So if you've not seen that before, that's what that is. So I fell in love with ABA during my undergraduate degree, went on to do a couple of master's degrees in ABA, one in Europe and one over in the USA. And I thought I wanted to work with kids, loved kids were the best. And then I went and worked with kids with autism after my master's degree. And after about 2 years, I was like, I love kids. I love the kids that I work with, but I don't love doing ABA with kids with autism. This is just it's not for me. This is not for me long term. Had a little bit of a crisis. And then I went back and actually did a Ph.D. in behavioral gerontology. So my research was all looking at working with older adults, specifically with dementia. And I've worked in academia, but I am now the co-director for Positive Aging Consultancy and Training. So we are a UK-based company that provides behavioural support for older adults with dementia and training for their loved ones and for their carers. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much most of the things about me.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Nicholas, would you care to share a little bit about yourself?
Sure, thank you. Also, hard to follow up on that because that was pretty cool, and your energy, Zoe, is like really awesome. So I am Nicholas Maio-Aether. I own Empowered, a center for sexuality here in St. Louis, and then also run the Certified Behavioral Sexologist program with Study Notes ABA. I actually had a very different path. I started with sex ed. I was trained in sex ed in 2003 and started delivering sex ed across Alaska and Hawaii. I'm from Alaska. I didn't just randomly choose to go up there to do that. And then during my undergrad, I ended up working at an adult store, and working there, I started helping repeated customers through more and more like relational things, and then also was helping people like a newly transitioned woman, with dilators and things like that, and starting to think about like, how can I help her be safe and comfortable and find pleasure. And so I was like, maybe I want to be a sex therapist. And so I got a graduate degree in psychology, and then learned about the different fields. And I am autistic, and I very, very much like a very concrete, formulaic approach to things where I know that something is going to be effective. And so ABA spoke to me, and I was like, can you do sex therapy through ABA? I don't know. So I started asking around, and the Chicago school allowed me to focus on that during my education. And so I started doing sexual behavior analysis while I was in practicum in 2012. And then I've been one of the forward-facing people in this subfield since then.
Great. Thank you so much. And Dr. Tinor? Oh, I don't know if I can't hear you. I don't know if, even though you're unmuted, I don't know if, can others hear, or am I the only one? No, we can't hear you. No. No. No, not. Nicholas said in the chat, try adjusting the mic setting to internal if you're on a laptop. Dr. Shawler, Dr. Williams Awodeha, would you mind assisting?
Yes, I'll message you individually, Dr. Bruce.
Thank you. I guess then we can come back to Dr. Tinor while we figure this out. So I'll go to the next question, but we'll definitely come back if that's okay. All right, so our next question is essentially to ask what kind of behavioral gerontology is, what sexual behavior analysis is, what behavior analysis in educational settings is, and kind of as a follow-up question or an additional question, how does interdisciplinary collaboration play a role in your respective subspecialties? So Nicholas, do you want to start us off there?
Certainly. So sexual behavior analysis is the application of behavior analytic lens into sexological work. Now, those are big words, so let me go even simpler there. It's taking behavior analytic principles looking at sexual and sociosexual, i.e. like, or not i.e., e.g. flirting, romantic, relational behaviors as well, and gender identity and presentation. Those all fall under sociosexual. So we address those areas, and then flat out sexual behavior. I mean, things like shaping of solo sex or assisting a couple in achieving orgasm. In sexual behavior analysis, I think one of the biggest areas that we've really found as it has evolved as a subfield has been that there are kind of two subsets of sexual behavior analysts. And there are those who want to focus this more in the area of intellectual disability and autism. And then there are those who do want to go more into neurotypical and offer an alternative, a nice scientifically sound alternative to traditional sex therapy.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. Dr. Lucock, can you tell us a little bit about behavioral gerontology, what it is, and how interdisciplinary collaboration plays a role?
Absolutely, this is so interesting. I'm sat here listening to all this, like this is fascinating. So behavioral gerontology is the application of behavioral principles to meet the needs of older adults, but specifically what kind of sets it apart is behavioral gerontology looks at the interaction between the environment and biological variables that are changing due to aging. So basically, when we age, that changes things kind of within us. It changes how we interact with the environment and how we perceive the environment, or how the environment operates on our behavior. And sometimes that can be to a detrimental effect. Sometimes it's positive. But we're generally, behavioral analysts are looking at how we can mitigate the effects of those variables, those biological aging variables on our relationship with the environment. And typically, behavioral gerontologists work with people aged 65 and above, but that's not a hard line for us. We take a real functional approach. So I've worked with people who have early onset dementia or in their 40s or 50s. And I've worked with people who are 103, I think was the oldest client that I've worked with. So when you think about, like, actually there's kind of a 50-60 year range of people of ages that we can work with, actually we work with a huge area of, like, a huge lifespan, right? It's not just this small group of older people. I also, actually, one of my pet peeves is when people introduce behavioral gerontology as a new or a novel application of ABA. Actually, behavioral gerontology is one of the oldest areas of ABA. It's one of the areas that was first kind of suggested that ABA would be really beneficial. So interdisciplinary collaboration is so important in this area. Older adults, particularly my population, I tend to work with people with dementia, need a lot of input from a range of professionals, and there's lots that we as behavioral analysts cannot and should not do. So people like geriatricians, or we call them kind of geriatric GPs over here, so the doctors, OT, speech and language therapists, even people like the chiropodists that comes to do their feet, the diabetes team, if somebody has those issues, those kind of health comorbid conditions. So yeah, it's really important that behavioral analysts or behavioral gerontologists work really closely with everyone on the team to make sure that that person is getting the best care possible.
Thank you. I think, Nicholas, you wanted to add a little bit to your response.
I did. I got so caught up on the first part of the question that I did not answer the second part. As Zoe was starting to get into that, I was like, oh, I failed. So I did want to know interdisciplinary collaboration is incredibly huge in sexual behavior analysis, especially. We have clients who are coming in where we're being told this person is a pedophile, or we're being told this person is gay, or we're being told this person has this. And it's like, who decided that? Who all on this team is coming up with these things? What is the client saying? But then we also have cases where a client comes in and has a legitimate trauma that needs to be processed. Let's say they've been sexually abused. I'm not here to do really in-depth trauma work. There are incredible processes in the psychotherapies to do that. What I really do in those kinds of cases, I try and work very much and make sure that my clients are actively processing their trauma with somebody else so that we can do this other work, or that they've already completed that journey. So they might come to me, say, hey, we want to do this. And I'm like, awesome. We start assessment. I'm like, hey, I think you should do private therapy first and then come back to me as a couple. I really want to throw out there that when we remember what our competencies are, what have we been specifically trained in, what have we been specifically supervised in, or had, at least consultation, and then what falls directly within our credential and our licensure. If it's not in there, I need to be asking for help. And that's okay, and we can. But one thing that I think is so important in interdisciplinary collaboration is having common language with the other mentalistic fields, because we sound like we got sticks up our butts when we talk, and we don't use common terms that they all use. And so they have a hard time understanding where we're coming from, and we have a hard time understanding where they're coming from. Even when I've made presentations about this, sometimes behavior analysts have been upset that I'm teaching mentalistic language to behavior analysts. I'm like, but this is a repertoire of skill that we need. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you.
Thank you. No, super important points to highlight. Dr. Tinor. No, I don't think I can hear you. Can you try speaking? Let's see.
You could try calling in from your phone and see if that works.
I think that's what he just did. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes. But I think we hear.
I think you need to mute on your picture, Bruce, and then just talk through the phone.
Yeah, I think on your computer you might have to turn off the audio, the speakers, and then. No.
Try now.
We could hear you when you were speaking through your phone, but I think you just need to turn off the audio coming from the laptop or your computer.
I just want to throw out there, if anybody wants to go into like behavioral task analysis making of things like this for people like us who are a little older and having more difficulty with the changes in tech, we need that too. That should be a new subfield of ABA, is just teaching behavior analysts the shifting tech.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Hip hip hooray.
Yay.
Thank you. I'm so sorry, everyone. I deeply, deeply apologize. Very sparingly has that happened since the COVID year. So do you want me to start back to just get a little background about myself?
Sure. Yeah, sure. No worries about that. We're flexible here. So
thank you so much. So again, my name is Bruce, Dr. Bruce Tinor. I am currently a building principal. I started my career as a special education teacher. So I started teaching, I live in Pennsylvania. I taught for 1 year in emotional support. I went to New Jersey, taught there for about 10 years. I taught early childhood. Believe it or not, it was like kindergarten cop, like the tall guy who's teaching preschooler kindergartners. So I taught that for about 10 years, and then I ended up going to school. My professor, after I got my grad school to go to for my special education master's, he indicated that maybe you should get your admin cert. And I was like, nah, I don't have aspirations to be a principal. I am taking the first class and loving it, just loving seeing the impact of like leadership. And then when I started going to school and I got my my last semester where you had to acquire all your hours. That's when I found out that, having the resources and the access to really make the change in a global setting, whether a program or for a district or for a building. So that's when I really want to move into leadership. So I ended up going into the leadership as an administrator, school administrator, where my first administrative job was the autistic support supervisor. So we had about approximately 40 classrooms, around 200 staff members, and it was 40 classrooms scattered across multiple counties. In the state of Pennsylvania, we have something called the intermediate units. For those who may not be familiar, they're service agencies. So school districts works together and collaborate within a county or multiple counties to help support. Money generates through this organization to really provide supports, behavioral supports, consultation, training, special education programming in the same buildings or in a center base. So I did that for 4 years, got a lot of experience. It was wonderful working with the population. I ended up taking a position for the last 4 years as a program administrator, principal for intensive emotional support. So students with behavioral and emotional dysregulation, severe problem behaviors, even students with who are on psychotropic medication and have a lot of maladaptive behaviors, where we saw a lot of students, behaviors were so dangerous, it required an excessive amount of restraints. Back in 2019, before the pandemic hit, we had about, in our program, was a small program, we had about 15, 16 kids, and it was like 90 restraints in the first 2 months. I'm a behavior analyst, so I end up saying, breaking and analyzing all the contingencies that were in the environment that really were really challenging. And we started putting together, obviously starts with staff training, token economy systems, and other interventions that are evidence-based to really implement it. We went quadrupled the number of students in our program, and we significantly reduced the amount of restraints that occurred in our building. I mean, again, we're pushing over approximately 60 students, and our restraints are barely cracking double digits with quadruple the number of students that we have in our program. And that's just credit to the science. So that, that's where I'm at currently right now. And that's what I'll be, and that's kind of the big thing that we push, the restraint reduction, but even skill acquisition to the point, the students who do come to our school, we are a school that's a center base where the students, the districts, the behaviors exceed the amount of support that's offered in a school district. So then they have to send us to us as a center-based program. We work with them. So we provide, obviously, interventions and replacement behaviors. And then once we identify the students' behaviors, or the skill repertoire has been, added and, has been acquired, so to speak, and problem behaviors are placed on extinction, we were able to have a discussion about bringing them back to their home school and reintegrating them back to their community. And thus far, in 4 years, we have never had one student return. And that's just a tribute to the science and what we do. So that's what I've been doing over the last 8 years as school administrator. So I'm trying to bring, obviously, in our programs in our building, not only as a behavior analytic approach, but also as a school leader into schools and programs, and trying to merge that in that setting. So the other question that you asked for follow-up will be, a behavior analysis in the education setting. And that's pretty much what, for my program, and what I've done is, looking at the program and its many facets. When you're looking at behavior analytic principles that are in an educational setting, you have to look at multiple facets. Number one, obviously, most school districts they're requesting your support is for behavioral concerns, maladaptive behaviors, problem behaviors that are persisting over some time. So if we receive students, or you're even pushing in and provide support in the school, obviously you're gonna using the science and the principles to really support school districts in their school. But also too, when behaviors are significantly reduced, or even placed on extinction, another key factor is skill acquisition. Not only behaviorally speaking, but also like literacy and fluency in math and reading. And those things also can cause problem behavior. So really, and they work simultaneously, right? So when problem behaviors are reducing, skill acquisitions should be increasing. So the most important part is ensuring that when problem behaviors when the analysis is completed and problem behaviors, are you seeing a significant reduction that you're acquiring skills, not only replacement behaviors, but also to the academic aspect? Because all students, whether you're special education or not in special education, but the majority of students that you potentially may be serving are students with special needs and different exceptionalities, ensuring that using the science to really acquire reading skills and, math repertoire and the other concepts, and gain that through precision teaching or direct instruction or corresponding. Those are also evidence-based interventions that can be used to really support and acquire skills.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That was all great to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move to the next question, and we do have, I don't know how many questions left, so I might have to kind of pick because you all are sharing so many interesting things. So I guess we'll start with Dr. Lucock. Can you tell us maybe what you typically do in your day-to-day work? And as a kind of a follow-up, why do you like working in your subspecialty?
Yeah, and I'll try and be quick for the sake of time. Okay, so my specific subspecialty is working with people with dementia. That's kind of where I work. That's the population that I love working with. That isn't all behavioral gerontologists, but it is my area. And people with disabilities and dementia. So people with Down syndrome are much more likely to develop dementia and about 20 years younger than the general population as well. So for people who work with people with intellectual disabilities, they really need to be hot on this, right? Because if we can start seeing signs of dementia in like their 30s, it's really important. So my kind of day-to-day is really varied. It's things like I tend to work in people's homes. So I will go out and visit them. I will work with their spouses or with them or with their carers, with their family. I will assess behavior. Sometimes that's with direct assessment. Sometimes it's not, because if you are a 80-year-old and you've lived your whole life very privately, as most of us do, you're not going to allow someone to, you're not going to get undressed and have a shower with someone in the room. So I cannot observe some behaviors. In that case, I have to train up the family members to try and take some data. I'll then design some programs and get those family members, train them up, or their carers, whoever it is, to deliver those and take some more data. I might be in hospitals, sometimes I work in dementia wards. I sometimes work in care homes, in nursing homes, out in the community. I also do a lot of staff training. That's a big part of what we do, because the levels of training are, especially in relation to behaviour, are pretty poor. And I think that's not just a UK specific thing. When I speak to my colleagues in the USA and in Canada, that's pretty standard across the board. And then what do I like about my subspecialty is that older adults are the best population. And I know I'm biased, but they absolutely are. They are phenomenal. They have a full learning history of 70, 80, 90 years. They are so interesting. And even older adults who have dementia, that dementia, yes, might impact how they interact with their environment. Maybe it removes their filter a little bit, which means that you get some of the best jokes and some of the best insults that you hear as well. It might change the way they interact with their environment. Some of the most enjoyable parts of my job are literally just sitting, interacting with older adults that I work with. And one more thing before I carry on, I said I was going to be quick and I wasn't, is that one of the things that I really like is the fact that most people who go into behavior analysis don't want to work with older adults. I think it's less than 0.1% of BCBAs work in behavior gerontology. Most people, especially students, think, I don't want to work with older adults. They smell funny. They're a bit weird. They might be a bit racist. I don't really want to work with them. Not for me. And one of the things that I like doing is combating this, because ageism is a huge problem in our society, right? If you were to, just look at what you see on TV. You are constantly bombarded with anti-aging products. If you think about any other marginalized group, if you were bombarded with products that said, oh, make sure that your skin doesn't look like this color, right? That's not okay. Why is it okay for us to say, make sure your skin doesn't look like it's old? Because that's what it is, right? So combating ageist stereotypes, ageist views on older adults and people with dementia is really is something that I really like working for, to get rid of that, to dispel those myths, and to promote a better and more positive view of aging and of older adulthood. And I'll shut up now.
Thank you so much. Nicholas, could you share a little bit in relation to this question?
Yeah, again, I'm just like, wow. Dr. Lucock, you need to look up Tuppy Owens if you don't know her. She's in the UK and she runs dating groups for adults with disabilities. Just thought that might be a fun connection. Okay, so in my subspecialty, day-to-day work, like it can really vary. Just like everybody ages, everybody is going to have some sort of sexuality and gender. And so getting in there and doing different work can look like helping a system learn to affirm a client's pronouns and identity so that he stops trying to cut off his own breasts. Sorry, I do deal with very difficult cases. I might needed to throw that out there first. Very intense work that we do, but coming in there and just teaching them to affirm the pronouns shaped the behavior of the individual very quickly as well. We had to shape their behavior, and then suddenly the system was taking care of the individual the way that he needed to be. So it can look like that. It can look like actually consulting for, and this is one of our biggest areas of work, is consulting for other BCBAs. BCBAs all over the place have clients who are entering puberty or already going through puberty, or they are adults. They have kids who have found and are actively seeking pornography. There are cases of abuse. So all of those things can come in where we are consulting for other BCBAs. And I will throw out there, I love doing that. I don't have to deal with insurance or anything. I charge the BCBA. So nice, no funder. But being able to just get in there and help a client and also not have to bill the client is lovely. Getting in there with our couples and doing that work does look very different than teaching a system or a team or a behavior analyst to affirm or help an individual. So working with couples, some people, until they actually witness my sessions, and I do make certain sessions open, they go, how can you do that work and it be behavior analysis? And then they always leave going, whoa, that was so behavior analytic. That's crazy. In couples work, it's very much helping them understand behaviorism and behavioral principles and getting them to start recognizing where they are punishing or rewarding each other, getting them to start engaging more functionally in communication about what it is that they're trying to get across to their partner. There's a lot of that work. And then we also do specific sexual work with couples through a process called Sensate Focus. In that we actually have them, they do their work separate, just like Dr. Lucock. I don't need to see all of this behavior, okay? They do that work separate, but then they bring it back. They bring back data based on it, and they bring back a narrative, and then we go ahead and we actually do IOA on their data. We make sure that they both agree that these things went down these ways. If they can't come up with agreement, I tell them I can't take that data. So very much keeping things very behavior analytic. Why do I like working in the subspecialty? I get to do a lot of really cool things with, I mean, every day is kind of different. It's very neat. It's very freeing. I get to work from home, where here I have my best friends in the world hang out with me all day while I work. But I'll say this more than anything. When you have a person who has been self-harming or suicidal because of the way that staff are treating them, and you get to see that person flourishing, that makes this something I love. When you have a woman who has been a victim of sex abuse and her husband thinks he's a sex addict, and they are wrapped up in all sorts of pop culture treatments that are actually making things worse, and I get to help them use solid science and end up to a point where they're making love on a regular basis and reporting back that she's having a great time. And that's even when she's reporting back just to me one-on-one. Like all of these things really, I think it makes, it's undeniable, the changes, and it makes me feel good. There's no way around it. I feel good when I see these changes occur.
Great, thank you so much for that. Dr. Tinor, would you care to share a little bit about your typical day-to-day work and why you like, working in the educational setting?
Absolutely. For me, for my day-to-day, a lot of things that I do is, every morning we have, before we start our day, we have team meetings. Our team meetings consist of an analysis of the classroom in regards to the staff in each of the classrooms. So we get together, we talk about each student, what are the problem behaviors, what are some successes, what are some things that are working, looking at behavior plans to find out what's effective, what needs to be revised. That's first thing in the morning. Then from there, I get downstairs, get the students off the bus, get them upstairs. And then from there, we kind of transition for breakfast, and then transition to their reading groups. So what we did was we using data. So we had benchmark data to find out what grade level the skills are on for their reading skills, because the majority of our students are below reading level. And then we use some a diagnostic assessment called core multiple measures to analyze specifically, what skills in regards to the deficits that needs to be addressed. And then from there, we use other form of assessments to find out where to group them. So for 30 minutes, they all go to a different classroom, and then we will teach specific skills to each of the students for that 30 minutes using a direct instruction curriculum as evidence-based. From there, the kids go back, and then part of my job is just overseeing the whole program, the whole building. So going into each classroom, supporting staff, making sure that staff are, number one, actively engaged with their learners and their students, making sure that data is being collected accurately, making sure that you're supporting the students as well too. So whether it's greeting them, whether it's just observing them, whether it's watching them, and supporting the staff, explain to them specifically, what are some things you're doing well? What are some things that we can just refine? We do have check-ins because some of our students have behavioral contracts. So they'll start the day with me. We go over the contract together, so they're able to go out there and go over specifically, what's the areas that we need to do to meet this criteria in order for you to contact reinforcement more frequently. And we do that together, with some of our students. And then also from there, our students are transitioning throughout the day. And again, for my job, I'm just making sure that everything is trying to run as seamless as possible. We do have a lot of students with significant problem behaviors, and their learning history are pretty intense. So again, being better at identifying precursor behaviors, really strong on antecedent interventions to make sure that before problem behaviors occur, we know the precursor behaviors, and we're going to go out there and provide intervention immediately rather than waiting to be reactive. And at the end of the day, for some of our class, if a particular student or students, had challenging behaviors throughout the day, again, come together immediately, not wait, and just identify what are some areas we got to do to continue to improve upon. And then, identifying variables that we can do to see we can help at least support control, to identify and also to treat, the students immediately, so these problem behaviors don't continue to persist over time. So why do I like it? I love working with people. I love working with children, students. It's just great in my position, because it's a combination of a school leader administrating, but also we're small enough that I'm able to be hands-on. So being with the staff, hanging in the classroom, working with all of the students, help supporting them, engaging with them, whether it's outside of recess, whether it's in the classroom, instruction, anything I need to do to help support the students. So that's kind of why I do. It's just that connection with the students and the people.
Great, thank you so much for sharing. I'm looking at the time, and I think this will probably be your last question. And I guess I'll start with maybe Dr. Tinor, just to, change up the order. Are there any mentorship or supervised field work or employment opportunities available in your subspecialty? And if there aren't, maybe any special interest groups or professional organizations, kind of anything to share that we can kind of guide students to?
Yeah, sure. So I'm in public education, so it's going to be obviously different. The certifications are not national, they're state. If you want to get into the education field, but if you're a behavior analyst who work for a private sector or employed by a school district, there are certain, if you are in the private sector, and obviously you have your mentors that you have within your agency, but for the public school, the biggest thing I think for what needs to be done is because there's not a lot of resources and a lot of supervised field work. But if you want to become an administrator or an education, there are school districts do run mentorship programs. So if you're a new staff members, even if a new behavior analyst who's employed by the school, what they do is they are able to go out there and connect you with other behavior analysts within your district or cohort, so to speak. So, here at our intermediate unit, we have several BCBAs, and they report to their supervisor, and they have their meetings to go over plans and go over different activities or different agendas to see what they can do to better enhance, what they do. So so again, this is going to be because the public sector is a little bit different, but if you are going to go into the public sector and work for a district, some of the mentorship and the supervised, the things that are out there are going to be as per district. So you just continue whatever entity you look for, they'll be able to provide that level of support. But again, if you want to get into the public sector, they are able to go out there and you'll have folks from the HR department to guide you through specific ways to go garner a particular certification or a combination of special ed and BCBA. And then, usually the districts will reach out or put together something for the behavior analyst or any other specialty within our special education or public education to help support throughout the way.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Nicholas, anything you can share in relation to this question?
Oh, so much. So I am the bylaws chair at ASECT, the American Association of Sexuality Educators, Counselors, and Therapists. And so I'm going to do a real quick ASECT plug. I'm just going to note that anybody who is a member of ASECT gets free career mentorship, and I am our career mentor who focuses on BCBAs. So anybody who is an ASECT member gets free meetings with me to help build their career, not focusing on supervision. It's I want a career, I want to build it. What can I do? How can I advertise? All of that stuff. We also did create our own certification, the Certified Behavioral Sexologist, CBS. And for that, any of our students do complete a supervised practicum, and that is supervised by me and my staff. They are able to get hours at my agency if they cannot get hours at their own. We also then potentially could offer employment once people are demonstrably competent. It is not a guarantee. I don't want to promise everybody employment. But something I want to note is that, again, across populations and across ages, you're going to have gender and sex. And so something that is really, really neat is every agency I know of would hire me in a heartbeat to have these competencies present. And anybody that has worked at Empowered who has gone on has had no difficulty finding jobs because people are like, oh my gosh, we could have one of you sex people on our own staff. Like, there's only a few of us around. There are 8 listed competent sexual behavior analysts on the SIG page. 8. So keep in mind, there is a huge need and there's not a lot of us running around. I'll also throw out there that now that we are adding a certification onto it, at least one other agency that I know of, I don't know if others are planning, but we do know of one, has created a position that is going to be at a paid higher rate than a standard BCBA for one of our graduates. So things are happening. And it is, yes, it's AASECT, American Association of Sexuality Educators, Counselors, and Therapists.
All right, thank you so much. And before I move on to Dr. Lucock, we also have a, we're going to send out a kind of like a resource kind of document for anyone who is, in attendance with, things like ASECT and kind of other things that are mentioned. But so turning it over to Dr. Lucock, so can you share a little bit about any maybe mentorship or supervised field work or employment opportunities within behavioral gerontology?
Yeah, and I'm going to follow Nicholas's footsteps and do a plug for the Behavioral Gerontology Special Interest Group, which I am the chair of. So that's one of the oldest special interest groups at ABI, and it's kind of representing behavioral gerontology across the world, really. So if you are interested, definitely join the SIG. It's relatively cheap for students, especially. And we actually have lots more coming out from the SIG over the next year or so that's for helping people get into behavioral gerontology. So yeah, definitely join if you're interested. In terms of mentorship and supervised field work, behavioral gerontology is hard because there's so few of us that there's just not enough behavioral gerontologists to go around, right? You can go countries without there being one. You can go many states in the USA without there being a behavioral gerontologist. So while it's harder, it doesn't mean there aren't any opportunities. With behavioral gerontology, you've just got to work harder and you've just got to be prepared to do it a little bit differently. You are not going to find behavior analyst in dementia position advertised for supervision or for as a job. It's just not going to happen. What I always tell my supervisees or my students or my mentees is go in as something else. So it tends to be activities coordinators if you want to work with people with dementia. They're the people that work in care homes or nursing homes, and they basically plan the day to keep people engaged, make sure there's enrichment going on. They're a really good position for behavioral analysts to get in as. You go in as an activities coordinator, you tell your boss, I also have this other skill set that I can help with. And they're like, yeah, okay, whatever, do your job and you can do your behavioral stuff as well if you want. I've never found anyone that's really refused, to be honest. You go in and you start doing it, and then you start being really good at managing people's behavior and most of our work with older adults with dementia in particular is around increasing engagement, increasing access to activities, and enriching life events, increasing independence, increasing choice. It's all about increasing, and all those challenging behaviors that you actually get called in for, or I get called in for, that falls away when you have a much better general life. So that's kind of where you need to go. There are a few PhD programs in the USA where you can get your supervised field work in behavioral gerontology. There's also my colleague in Iceland, if you want to go to Iceland, also has started a program there. Otherwise, it's going to be a case of either getting remote supervision or remote mentoring from a behavioral gerontologist, and going and finding your own position and doing it that way. So yeah, it's much harder, but it's so worth it. It's absolutely worth it, I promise.
Thank you. Thank you so much for everyone for sharing. I will now pivot to any questions from the audience. You're welcome to use the chat. I think you can unmute yourself if you would rather ask your question vocally. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, I will also display the post-test slide. So if you took the pre-test, please also take the post-test. But any questions? We have about 10 minutes left. If not, I can go back to our kind of pre-planned questions. So I'll give a minute or so. Okay, in the meantime, then maybe we do have time for, let's see. We'll go with this question, and we can start with Nicholas, what advice do you have for students who want to pursue a career in your subspecialty?
Learn to be okay with being uncomfortable. That is huge. One of the things that we did incorporate into the CBS program, because it is so necessary, is an in-person 10 CEU evaluation, where we intentionally address the most uncomfortable things in sexology. And by doing this and having like debriefs afterwards and a lot of like ACT and regulation, like we are able to go through this journey together, and then also learn about like our boundaries. What am I not going to be able to work with? Whoa, I might want to work with this population, and prior I had bias I didn't even know I had. So really one of the most valuable experiences for me has been meeting people in different populations. So a large part of that, we are actually bringing in people from different populations. So like we have autistic kinky queers leading a 2-hour talk. We have a non-offending minor attracted person leading a 1-hour talk. I mean, we are really going there when it comes to like these uncomfortable areas in sexuality, and really going into this notion of like, and this is something I definitely think you should all consider. Am I here to do good by the human I serve? Or am I here to control? And that, I think, is a really important thing for behavior analysts to remember. It's not really our job to control so much as to be on top of variables by which we could control, and trying to develop, I think, a sense of systemic self-control. Like the system or the client should be able to take care of themselves by the time we're out of there. That's something that I'm really big on and just want to throw out there. So if you're uncomfortable about the way someone else is acting, is this that you just want to control it and shut it down? Is always something to consider.
Great, thank you so much. Dr. Lucock, any advice for students who want to pursue a career in behavioral gerontology?
Yeah, I think I said it before, be ready to work harder, but it's dead worth it. I would also say, do not expect your skill set of your ABA skill set with working with kids or kids with autism, or even with people with intellectual disabilities, to transfer readily, because it doesn't. And I've worked with students who have worked with kids with autism, and then they've come into a dementia care setting and they're like, good morning, nice to see you, how are you? You're very quickly going to get a punch in the face from an older adult with dementia, right? So there's a lot of skills. Obviously, there's a lot of ABA that transfers over, but there is a lot to learn about working with older adults that you will not learn. You cannot just simply pick up along the way. You need some additional training. I would also agree that you've got to examine your own biases, right? Your ageist biases. How do you think of older adults? Do you think of them as doddery? Do you think, oh God, they're going to die anyway? Why are you even bothering to do this? Which I've definitely heard before. I've heard that from family members about their own loved ones say, well, they're going to die soon anyway, so why are you trying to change this? Why are you trying to do anything for them? There's also positive bias, like that all older adults are wise and wonderful, or that they're or oh, they're really cute. Oh, I love old people, aren't they really cute? They're also really not great things to think about older people. And then just go and read and learn. Yes, it's a small field, but there is lots of information out there. There's lots of articles, there's book chapters, there's CEU courses. It's like plug for our CEU courses. But there's lots of ways to expand your knowledge in behavioral gerontology before you dive into that field. But it's totally worth it. They're the best population. Sorry, you guys have great populations as well, but obviously old people are the best.
Thank you. Finally, Dr. Tinor, any advice for students who want to go into your subspecialty?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing is just, when you're going into a public school, working with students with needs, the biggest thing is collaborate, because you enter a realm as say as a behavior analyst, but you enter a realm of special education or education, and the rules and regulations and bylaws and guidelines are totally different. So make sure you immerse yourself in the law, guidelines, any provisions that are occurring. That way you're just aware of, restrictions you may have or opportunities you may have, in that area too, and collaborate. Makes the biggest thing is for behavior analysts who are coming into the schools. Try your best not to come in there requesting that you're the expert. Come in there from a collaborative approach and just going out there and just saying, I'm here to help, I'm here to support, my job is to collect data and let the data tell the story. And the data is going to drive instruction, it's going to drive effective change. And I think that's the best way to come approach is just understanding, laws, bylaws, guidelines, and also to come from a collaborative approach. That will work a lot better in favor for the teachers and paraprofessionals, administration, knowing that they have an individual they can count on to be very, very supportive, collaborative as a team player. And that will go a long way, in the public school.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you all so much. So we're, coming towards the end of our hour. Before we go, this is kind of a plug for the rest of the panels that we'll have in the series. So next month, the experimental analysis of human behavior. After that, sustainability and climate change. And then in September, we have public safety. And then October, to kind of finish things out, crime, delinquency, and forensics. So if you're interested in any of those, you can be sure to kind of follow our the SIU Behavior Analysis and Therapy social media accounts to get more information on who the panelists will be, how to register, all of those things. And I guess, I want to, on behalf of Dr. Shawler and Dr. Williams Awodeha, express our gratitude to the panelists. I wish we could have like an hour for each subspecialty because there's just so many questions that I personally have that I'm just interested in learning more about. But I thank you all for taking the time to share, your experiences and being here today. This recording will be posted on YouTube, and then we'll also send out the resources page that we mentioned earlier. But thank you all for coming, and just thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for featuring behavioral gerontology. It's I could also talk about it for hours.
Yes, thank you for including us. This is such needed work that you're doing. It's so cool seeing people do this with students and not after they've already gotten themselves kind of into the more standard box, so to speak. So many people are trying to find their way out of that box. And I think it's really cool that you're helping them ahead of time.
Innovative, cutting edge. Thank you so much for doing what you're doing, because it's very important that, again, to the point of Nicholas, it's going out there and providing a level of support, guidance, and training earlier rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everyone. Well, hope you all enjoy your days and take care.
Happy Pride Month, everyone.
Really
Thank
quick.
you.
We forgot to put your contact information up. If you guys are willing to share it, can you put it in the chat, please?